And so we said to Jerry and Esther in the early days, because they wondered about that, we said, it doesn't need to be this way, but it often is. That people equate the value that they're going to receive with what it costs, or even with the sacrifice. We talked about that earlier. And so set your prices high enough that it feels like it's of value to them, but not so high that they can't easily reach it.
Yeah.
And so they set their prices in 1989 and have not changed them since.
Yeah.
Because they found that balance. And you can't compare your price with anyone else. People tell Esther remembers going to a seminar early on. This was someone had a flyer, and it was a Shirley MacLaine seminar. And Esther had been receiving Abraham for a while, and someone gave she and Jerry this flyer, and they asked, do you think we should go? And we really encouraged them to go. And Esther thought, how odd that Abraham would encourage us to go somewhere. But the price of the seminar was $400. It was for a day, which seemed like a lot of money, Esther thought. And the first thing that Shirley MacLaine said as she got on the stage was, well, I want to talk about the money. And the audience laughed. There were 1,000 people in the seminar, and there were 20 of those seminars around the country. And Jerry and Esther got one of the last seats in one of the last places. So her seminars were sold out, and Jerry and Esther were there. They weren't really sure what they were doing there. We had encouraged them to go. And Shirley MacLaine said, if this had been an acting seminar, I would have charged $3,000. If it had been an accounting seminar, it would have been more like $1,000. So I thought I'd go on the low side, she said. And it was like everyone in the audience just kind of settled into that. And Esther laughed about it, and she thought, you just have to decide. Jerry said, as long as it pays for itself. Because they had enough money to live that was coming into them, for them. He said, it needs to pay for itself or it isn't working.
Yeah.
So they figured out what it would cost for them to fly to a city, to rent a car, and to rent a small meeting room. Mm-hmm. And then they divided the number of seats in that meeting room by what it cost, and that's what they charged. And so Esther remembers the first seminar that they attended, the very first. They weren't even conducting it. They were invited to be there. And the woman who was the orchestrator of it said, everyone here does private consultations, and so you should too, and you should charge this much money. And so people signed up for it. A lot of people signed up for it right away. And Esther remembers the very first person, when it was time for them to hand her some money, she felt so awed about it. And then it turned out that the tape recorder that Jerry had turned on to record it hadn't worked. And so since they didn't have a tape to give him, Esther said, oh, never mind. In other words, it felt so odd. But by the end of that day, Esther was realizing that there is value being exchanged. Mm-hmm. And so isn't there always value being exchanged?
Yeah.
In other words, when you go to the grocery store, do they say to you, oh, never mind? Or do you go to the grocery store and say, I just thought maybe you'd make an exception with me? Mm-hmm. You have to feel that you're offering value. Oh, yeah. Everything is a reciprocal. It's in and out, in and out, mm-hmm. in and out. There's no right or wrong in this. Okay. You couldn't decide how much anyone's time is worth. It's like when you are paid by the hour for something. This is worth this much per hour. And Esther thinks there are not enough hours in the world to justify the dollars that are flowing into my experience. Mm-hmm. And we explain it's not about that. It's not about expenditure of action. It's about attraction of desire. And there is enough abundance of all manner for everyone to receive all that they are wanting. Mm. there is such confusion about how that works. How does the economy expand anyway?
Right.
It's not that long ago that you were exchanging beads and shells. No value is being trucked in from other places. In other words, as a society, you are defining and deciding the value that you are giving and taking, that you are receiving and yielding. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to decide that you are worthy of receiving. And until you do, others won't agree with you.
Right. I'm realizing as we're talking that I know that what I give is very high value, but I'm not putting myself as high value. And so there's the
Well, how do you
wobble.
separate one from the other?
I'm not sure.
That's wonky.
It's wonky.
That makes no
Yeah.
sense. It's the way you are justifying not letting yourself have something
Right.
that you want because you don't believe that you should have something that you want.
Yep.
Somehow you've come to believe that you are here to give,
Right.
but how are you going to, we had this conversation just a little bit ago. We were talking in terms of energy, of replenishment, but hotel rooms cost $20,000 to $40,000. If you offer refreshments, they cost even more. Transportation costs thousands of dollars to bring your staff and your camera. In other words, in order for you to put yourself somewhere, a lot of money is being exchanged.
Yep.
And so everyone understands that. Where's the hang up with you?
I think that's why I'm asking. Yeah, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not
think
sure
about it.
where that
think
is.
about how illogical that is.
It is. As I say it out loud, I realize how ridiculous it is.
Well, maybe it's because what you're doing, it was not so difficult for Esther to understand when Jerry said, we need to start it the way we want it to end up. He was older and wiser, and he also said it has to pay for itself or it isn't working.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no expenditure going out, then maybe there isn't anything for it to pay for except your time. And if you put no value on your time, well, then maybe you think that there's an even exchange. Where if you were going to a hotel room or to a ship or to some place where there is an expense involved, then it would have been easier for you to at least recoup what you were paying out, and that might have primed the pump for you. It primed the pump for Esther. As long as we break even, we're happy. As long as we break even, we're happy. That's kind of where you're at.
Well, that's where it is, and I want it to shift.
But in time, you begin to understand that breaking even, let's talk about breaking even. This is the breakthrough that you're going to have.
Yep.
Let's talk about breaking even in terms of what is even, meaning giving and receiving, giving and receiving, giving and receiving. So you just want to be the one that just gives and gives and gives? That's not balance.
Right.
You're just giving, and they're just getting, and you're not getting, you're just giving. That's jacked up.
Yep.
That's like breathing all the air out and never breathing any air in. That's not going to last very long.
No. Yeah.
And before long, it is our promise to you, you will find yourself in a place of resentment. Uh-oh, that already happened. Just a little bit.
I don't know if it did.
Yes, you went right to that place. And you know what's good about that? It's causing you to ask this question. How long am I going to go on like this? How long am I going to spend my time doing that?
Right.
Isn't that a contrasting thing that is that causes you to launch a desire about asking?
Yeah.
You see,
It's good.
when we say to you, when you ask, it is given, that confuses people because they don't understand what is, and they don't understand that it is given. In other words, they didn't understand about the vortex. They don't understand that when you ask, it is given, it is done. It is done. And so the discomfort that you're feeling is there's all of these resources piled up in your vortex that you're not letting in. And that's what's making you feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
It feels uncomfortable to ask for it and and have it be a vibrational version and not allow it to flow into your experience. That's the wobble.
Yeah.
The wobble isn't that you don't deserve it. The wobble is that you do deserve it, that you have attracted it, and that you're not letting it in.
Yeah.
And the reason you're not letting it in is because you've been trending with some thoughts that have been offered by who? In other words, who are the shortage consciousness people